I'm Ben Ryman, and this is Behavior Speak. In episode 234, Rea Vuksan shares her journey from Canada to Croatia, where she has dedicated her career to disseminating applied behavior analysis in a region where it is still developing. She discusses the importance of mentorship in her career, the challenges faced in autism services in Croatia, and the cultural responsiveness required in her practice. Rea also highlights her work in Montenegro, where she has trained thousands of professionals in ABA, and her current efforts in Denmark to further expand the reach of applied behavior analysis. Throughout the conversation, she emphasizes the need for trust and understanding in working with families, and the importance of adapting practices to fit cultural context. Welcome to Behavior Speak, Rea.
Thanks, and nice to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. I just want to acknowledge I'm producing this podcast on the territories of the Klamath Players, Moko, Comox, and Seychelle First Nations. Today marks the first week of Truth and Reconciliation Month here in Canada. Extra grateful and do a lot of good learning. So Rea, why don't you start by telling me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So first of all, I'm really happy to be here, and it's always fun to chat about things you love to do. My name is Rea, and I guess the reason why I'm here is because I'm a behavior analyst, and I don't know if behavior analyst is an ordinary behavior analyst, but I guess what sets my story off on a slightly different note is that my whole goal over the next 10 years almost has been disseminating ABA away from where I originally learned everything about it, which was Canada. So I'm currently living in Europe. I was living in Canada for 20 years, and most of what I learned about ABA and I became a behavior analyst happened in Canada. So I lived in Toronto for 20 years. I moved there when I was 18 years old. That was like 1997. Calculate my age now. And I was living there for quite a long time. And then I just thought, well, you know what? I'm going to choose a road less traveled and come back to Europe. I'm originally from Croatia, so I was going back to my roots. Went back to Croatia, did some work there, and I'm currently in Denmark. That's kind of in a nutshell.
Amazing. Okay, let's start back in Canada and kind of how you found behavior analysis in the first place.
Yeah, that's actually a really funny story. I was always interested in studying psychology, and my goal was to work with elderly populations. I was, volunteering with the senior population in Toronto, and my goal was to work in the field of dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. And just as I got into my first year at U of T, a friend of mine and I were in the library, and she was going into a math program. And she said to me, back in the day, we didn't have cell phones. She said, I have to make this really important call. And the reason is that I think I found the perfect student job for you. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, there's this amazing job. And there's a volunteer who connects families of children with autism with psychology students. I was like, what? What's autism? This was 1997.
Sure.
I had just bought my first book. And this is how the whole journey started. I went to a payphone. She made the call. First of all, I told her I wasn't really eager. I didn't think I could see myself working with kids. But she said she was really adamant, and she was convinced that I would be a perfect match. So she went to the payphone, said she wanted to call home. And while I was waiting and looking through my books, she made the call and handed over the headphone to me and said, that's the lady, you better connect. So this is how my whole journey started. I got into, as a psychology student, just starting out, I was working part-time. This was 1999. I was working part-time in the early intervention programs at the Toronto Partnership for Autism Services, and we were home-based. I was very fortunate to be mentored by Dr. Ann Cummings back in the day. And my first day at work, I had no idea what was going on. They were doing IBI or intensive ABA in home. This was a family setting, sort of in-home setting. And then the next 3 years, I was learning ABA from a parent and from Ann Cummings. And this was really, for me, a life changer. I started to really learn a lot more about the field, about the flexibility it provides. And this was for me I was even asking myself why they were paying me. This was better even than any dream volunteer job I could have. So I was in the clinical field after I graduated from psychology. I entered the Surrey Place Center, which was a developmental services program in Toronto. I was very fortunate to be in there. Early intervention program, first as an instructor, then as a supervisor. And that's kind of the context in which I decided to go further. This was, I think, 2007 when the first verified course sequence, or actually a BROC program in Applied Behaviour Analysis, actually with the specialization in Applied Behaviour Analysis, was open at Brock University in St. Catharines. So we were the first cohort and we were very happy. I was also lucky because Dr. Rosemary Kondelak, who was also my work mentor through Surrey Place, was the professor and she's still there. Shout out to Rosemary for sure. Learned a lot from her. Yeah, so that was a really, really kind of nice addition to all the knowledge I acquired through work, through first, in-home programs in Surrey Place Center. Then I slightly started to become interested in sort of generalizing things that we were doing clinically to more natural settings. And we had just opened a pilot program at that time for helping that was deemed to kind of help transition kids to school. So kids that were receiving early intervention or EIBI in a clinical setting were moving on to school, and we opened the first transition program at Surrey Place Center. And this is where I met a lot of school board staff and got offered a position in the Toronto District School Board as part of their autism services team. And this was also a very different experience for me because, as you can imagine, schools are very different from the clinical setting. It's a more natural environment, it's a fluid environment. A lot of people don't know a lot as much about ABA as we do. So that was quite lovely for me. I was there for 10 years.
Amazing.
In that job.
Wow, really cool. And interesting to hear a little bit about sort of some of the history of sort of ABA in Ontario as well. I'm being in Canada myself. I've interviewed a few folks from Ontario, but mostly newer behavior analysts. So it's nice to hear some of that early stuff. Touching on that, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about. I really kind of hear in your voice sort of the gratitude for having such great mentors. And I'm wondering if you could tell me just a little bit more about the two you mentioned, starting with Ann Cummings. Who was she?
Ann Cummings was an amazing psychologist, was also a researcher, but a very, very passionate and warm person who I guess dedicated her whole life to ABA. And I think she was also one of the founders of Ontario ABA Association. I met Anne when she was supervising different families in Ontario. I think she was living in the States at the time, and she was coming. I think she would see something like 50 families in a weekend, which is a really short time. She was a tough mentor, I have to say. There was, she had a really tough kind of expectation on her therapist. And I remember her saying, I can always fire a family if I want to. But she wanted things to be done right for the benefit of the children and for the families she was working with. So it was really amazing. All the tools that I've learned were through her. And the parents that she was supervising felt really empowered, she was a coach and a supervisor and an advocate and everything all in one, and an amazing clinician. Just unfortunately, we lost Anne, I think 9 or 10 years ago. She passed away. But yeah, I was just lucky to be under her mentorship for about 5 years.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
Sounds like she had a real impact. And then Dr. Kondelak?
And Dr. Kondelak is very charismatic, super knowledgeable, very versatile clinician, a real, I would say, legend in her field, and the person that if you meet her at conferences, she's the one who will party with you. And a really nice professor, amazing professor. She always has sort of a large frame view of applied behavior analysis. She always thought outside of the box. She was always looking at practical applications of ABA and how ABA can really be pushed further in the real world, not just in our kind of sheltered clinical world. So I was fortunate to be first mentored, hands-on through my through my work, and then later being her student, just learning about the theory behind it was really, really amazing. So yeah,
right on.
really lovely person to get to know and to have the opportunity to work with.
Absolutely. So tell me what was the impetus for sort of going back to Europe, back to Croatia?
Yeah. So, as I said, I always kind of dreamt about disseminating ABA because, as we all know, ABA is very, very strong in North America and not as widespread in Europe. It depends on a country, I guess, but certain countries are more advanced and some are still kind of in the early stages of learning about what ABA is. And I wasn't sure where I was going to go. Obviously, the easiest would have been just to go back to Croatia, but I was thinking maybe starting off in another country. But then I started to research, I think this was 2015. I started to look around sort of what is there? Is there any ABA in Croatia? Is there any knowledge? And I came across this program that was starting up at the University of Zagreb, which was a verified course sequence that was going to start, I think, 16. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. It was a one-time program. And when I looked at the BACB's sort of credentialing database, there was only one BCBA in Croatia before this verified course sequence was established. So I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. They don't have a lot of supervisors then. This would be a bit of a problem. And I thought this might be a nice thing to do. So I got in contact with the foreign professors that were going to teach there. Sus Nikolopoulos was one of the professors and actually a lead professor for that program. And he offered that I come and join their teaching team. So that's what I did. I got a leave of absence approved. Yeah. And I just left. I was going to stay for a year. And I decided to stay for 2 years. And then I decided to stay indefinitely. And that was because I felt like there was more work to be done. So thanks to that verified course sequence, which had about 20 people signed up, and there weren't just people from Croatia. It was open to other countries in the region as well, because the language is very similar. So we had people from Serbia, from Bosnia, from Croatia, and these were mostly professionals from different fields like psychology, speech and language pathology. So it was a very exciting thing, and I got to supervise some really amazing practitioners from those areas. And thanks to the program, from having just us 2 BCBAs there in Croatia, we now have 14, and that's
amazing.
huge. Yes.
Do you have a certification with the International Behavior Analysis Organization, the Qualified Applied Behavior Analysis Credentialing Board, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, or are certified through your region's Behavior Analyst Credentialing Board? You can earn continuing education units for this episode by going to www.behaviorspeak.com and clicking on CEUs. The first secret word is Ontario.
That's pretty good.
And who was that first BCBA?
The first BCBA was Nirvana Kos, and Nirvana Kos is still she's Croatian. She very much like myself she lived in the States for many years and decided to also come to Croatia and help disseminate ABA. She's still there. She has her own private practice. So her and I were kind of bouncing ideas, how we could go about this whole mission of getting the word spread through the country. And she's very hardworking. She cheered me on and she kind of encouraged me to come. I think she was my kind of like, you gotta get over here. It's really great. You're gonna love it. And so I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. And so, you go to Croatia, there's one BCBA there, you find out there's a VCS. That seems like, that seems unusual that sort of a country with one certified behavior analyst would suddenly have a VCS. What was sort of kind of the history of how that program was formed and why it was formed?
Yeah, I only learned later as I got deeper into the whole story that Neil Martin, who is in the international development at the
Yes.
BACB, Neil had one verified course sequence done at that same university a few years before that. But unfortunately, there were, for some reason, no opportunities for people to be supervised. And all of that kind of fell flat and he didn't go further. And this was his effort. This first effort, I guess, wasn't successful. The second time around, a lot of students who participated in that first VCS, which was maybe slightly unofficial, or at least it didn't go through, they were interested to really pursue ABA. So a lot of the people who came and attended our program had already heard it a few years before. I mean, some of the topics have changed, but a lot of them were really, really eager to do it right this time. And they managed to proceed and actually they got their degrees.
Maybe you can tell me a little bit about sort of the history of kind of, ABA and autism services in Croatia and sort of why there was a demand for, a VCS in the first place.
To be very honest, I think when you look at the general public, they don't connect autism and ABA as much as they do in other countries. I think that whole connection is quite new. But what I think is happening is that a lot of parents are seeking services that are ABA-based, parents of kids with autism. So I think a lot of the demand came from there, from just parents being exposed to different media platforms where they hear about ABA, they're learning more about ABA, and they were starting to kind of wonder and put pressure on the professionals in Croatia to maybe get educated in the field. Also, the professionals that attended our cohort themselves have somehow come in contact with it. One of the professors at the university in Zagreb went and visited one of the US ABA programs, and she was quite blown away by how much they could accomplish with the kids. And she was the one who really, together with Neil Martin, advocated for the program. They saw the need from the parent side. They saw the benefits, I think she even worked there for a few months, and she felt like this would be a really good addition to their kind of rehabilitation program at the university, that the kids could be, if they had more professionals in ABA, kids could be receiving really good services.
Right on. And so this is only 2015 that this program started. And so what does sort of autism services, what sort of a history of kind of autism treatment and then I suppose funding for services look like?
It's actually the resources are very limited. What a parent can get is not a whole lot of support is available to families. A lot of kids get diagnosed quite late, and there's this whole push to, first of all, to get diagnosed, you're often placed on a wait list. You're very often told that you should probably wait. They might just sort of grow out of it. So they're really pushing for the diagnostic practices to become a lot better in screening for early signs. And once the child is diagnosed, then there is this whole gap of where do we go? What do we do? And a lot of the parents take their children wherever they think would be beneficial. A lot of the times some of these practices are not evidence-based, and some of them are harmful. They're usually private practitioners who are providing these services. Some of them are not even certified to be providing them. The prices of private treatments are very high. Parents are paying out of pocket. I think there are a lot of wait lists in the public system of getting your child enrolled in the specialized kindergartens. Not everybody can get a spot. It's really very, very hard even to get a speech and language pathology intervention. You would get something like once a month, you would see a speech and language pathologist for a half hour. That's really nothing. So publicly funded services and early intervention in general is not very advanced in Croatia. And this is why parents are really left to their own, abilities, and a lot of families are paying a lot of money out of pocket. And burning out in the whole process because Croatia has a very medical model of disability. So parents have to drive through the whole city all day to kind of go from one therapist to the next, and they don't get a lot of help at home. There are no respite services. So it's very stressful.
And is that sort of, to the kind of special needs population, or is that sort of in general that kind of child services are not, or just services in general are not as big for sort of the government?
Yeah, I think it's particularly pronounced in the developmental disabilities sector, and also in sectors where the populations are vulnerable, like elderly population also is not receiving enough that they should be receiving. They're living sort of right below the sort of poverty level. So it's really very vulnerable populations in Croatia are, I would say, slightly neglected just because the country doesn't have the same focus on those things for now. So I hope that will change at some point.
Yeah. And so it's with that program starting in 2015, and at the time there was just the two of you as BCBAs, and you say now there's 14?
Yeah, there's 14.
And so that program started in what was it, 2017, you said?
Yeah, I think it was, the 2016. I think I was just a year late because I came in 2017.
And so it was approximately 5 years until the BACB stopped certifying folks. And so in 5 years, you managed to get 12 more BCBAs. That doesn't seem like a lot. Is that because a lot of them sort of left, or?
Yeah, there's a total of 14, and that the two of us would be the other two. No, I think the other ones, some of them didn't go through with the certification. Some people were certified, but they are practicing in different countries. I'm supervising 2 BCABAs that came out of that program, and they're 2 speech and language pathologists who have an amazing program, private program in Serbia. So some people got certified, some didn't. We had about 20 people in the cohort. So I would say there were a few parents attending the program just for the purpose of finding out more for their kids. So that brings us up to about 20, but yeah.
So was it just the one cohort?
Only one.
It didn't repeat?
No.
And what happened there? Why not another one? Just demand?
I don't know. I really don't know. I can tell you that maybe the focus shifted away from ABA. I think the whole sort of autistic groups that are kind of self-advocating and probably spreading some not so positive things about ABA have had a huge impact in Croatia. And we have really tried it. We've formed a Croatian association in Applied Behaviour Analysis, and our goal was really to have a dialogue with these groups, but they weren't ready for a dialogue. So that's the ongoing challenge that I guess is happening everywhere in the world.
Yeah. No, and I hadn't thought about that, especially for sort of where a field is so new in a country at a time when, there is a lot of opposition towards behavior analysis and the practices and whatnot. And it would be hard to sort of, whereas sort of in the US where they've been doing it for, 30, 40 years, they already have an established field. It's still a conversation there, of course, but that must be an uphill battle. So tell me about the Croatian Association, how it was formed and the work you're doing there.
Yeah, we are, I guess we're a newly formed association. We have just established ourselves about a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And we're sort of, trying to figure out what our vision would be, how would we move the field further now in these sort of recent developments, like what you've described, with a very powerful group that has started to kind of fight against behavior analysis. So we're looking at some projects that would help us move the field forward in a sort of user-friendly manner. So we had talked about, maybe making some fun, brief educational videos about how ABA can be best utilized, breaking some of the misconceptions and myths that exist. But, first things first, and one of the first things we decided to focus on was just start working towards a website that would make us more visible.
Sure.
And the IBAO has actually donated some funds to us to be able to do that. So we hope
Amazing.
we have already drafted this website. We just have to kind of make it happen. And we plan to have a database of all the certified practitioners in the country, because now that the BACB is no longer certifying outside of North America, we are scared that people will start to claim that they have, the background that's sufficient to practice. And so we want to have a platform on which we will have all the people who have the right qualifications, and parents can reference the website for more information, and something that will be easy enough for people to read, and just as easy as it is to read, other social media platforms, because I think there's a lot of sort of misinformation there, and they're accessible, they're everywhere. So we need to be sort of better than that. That's kind of our vision.
As accessible and
So we hope that was our first goal, and that's what we're currently working on. We also wrote, before we established the association, we wrote a draft version of the first ABA manual that was going to be distributed through schools and kindergartens and accessible to students. But we're still looking for ways to publish it, because that's edited and publish it, being sort of, we don't have a lot of funds on our hands. So we're really going to look into doing that, because the draft is done. We just have to get that going.
Being that the language is similar to folks in Serbia and Bosnia, is there some collaboration there at all? And
we don't really have so many. Yeah, we're not really in touch with the other surrounding countries, which was why we initially thought that maybe having some sort of a regional association, we don't want to call it the Balkans, but maybe something of that sort, where the countries are small and we can connect. But we still sort of decided to go ahead with the Croatian version, although we do have some members from Montenegro who joined our association, and they're helping us. And I'm pretty constantly in touch with professionals from Bosnia, professionals from Serbia that I collaborate with. So, those are small circles, and we are still trying our best to kind of stay in touch, and we don't have formal meetings, but to be in touch occasionally and kind of move the field forward. We're now translating the IBAO exam for the entry level, the technician level, and that's nearly finished. And I'm in collaboration so we're doing this from the Croatian Association side, together with a practitioner from Bosnia who lives in the States, and she will help us kind of proofread that to make it, because languages are slightly different, so we need to make sure that we stay within the cultural norms and the dialects that exist. So I'm very excited about that. I think we have another maybe month or so before the exam will be translated, and that will be available. So I think certification process will get easier.
Wow.
At least for the entry level.
And is there are you providing, or are others providing, kind of entry level training as well in language?
I actually provide an entry level training course in for the IBT certification in Croatian. Amazing. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of literature, like manuals that have been translated, but so the coursework is delivered in Croatian. We have translated all the basic terminology. We have even translated the BACB ethics code and the task list number 5. And so, we're trying to kind of expand from there. But yeah, definitely working. It's a work in progress.
Amazing. One of the reasons I like doing these interviews is obviously to learn about the guest and the work that's being done in all these amazing countries. I also know that we often have listeners that are supporting families outside of Croatia that are Croatian immigrants in other countries, and so I want to talk a little bit about sort of kind of culturally responsive care in Croatia, and just a little about sort of Croatian culture in general. I wonder if you could tell me just a little bit about Croatia first, just from sort of even a geographical standpoint. Kind of where is it, and sort of a bit about the people in the country. The second secret word is Brock.
Well, Croatia is in sort of central part of Europe. kind of next to Italy, really. So we have a
Okay.
lot of, it's one of the countries that was formerly part of the Yugoslavia, but after our war that happened 30 years ago, we are now a country on its own. We have about 5 million people living there. Most of the services are in Zagreb, which is the capital city of Croatia. And yeah, it's a lot of the countries that were part of the Yugoslavian Union are similar in a lot of ways and different in a lot of ways. So I also work in Montenegro, and I have kind of spread my dissemination of ABA there. So in some ways, those countries overlap. And I didn't even know, coming out of Canada, I wasn't even sure. I guess I was so naive to the whole process and the importance of being culturally responsive and culturally sensitive. So although this is the country I grew up in, there are a lot of things that I had to kind of learn and be really sensitive and careful with. So Croatia, being a small country with limited resources, but also a European country, is a country where there's a strong focus on family ties. Families keep close together, help each other, and family is a world in and of itself. So knowing this, you as a practitioner need to really always have that in the back of your head. So some of those things that kind of I would stress when you're practicing in Croatia would be that, if you're setting goals, those goals have to be family-friendly goals. So really focusing maybe on teaching kids how to help around the house, how to be involved in the family meal preparations, how to teach them to visit extended family, how to help parents take their kids to birthdays, because they'll have many cousins and many other members of their family that they will be often spending a lot of time with. So teaching or helping kids tolerate and later learn to enjoy some of the family gatherings is very important skill. And so keeping that in the forehead, sort of forefront of your practices is I found really important. There is a strong emphasis on neatness, how to be tidy and neat. So cleaning up your room, making sure that shared areas, a lot of families are living in smaller spaces, that those shared areas are really tidy. Those are all skills that maybe in different cultures would not be really very important, but in Croatia and countries around us, they are. Also, religion is very important. Croatia is predominantly Catholic, but we have other religions there, but a lot of people practice Catholicism, and often families will go to church. So, helping a child be a part of that can really benefit and improve the quality of life of the whole family. So that's kind of like really thinking about what goals you're going to implement is, I think, really important, and understanding the culture helps. Then you have also a strong emphasis on politeness. People try to be very polite to each other. So being careful about comments you make, not making it too blunt too quickly. You have to really be mindful that people may get offended and may not see it as a joke or something that you thought would just kind of be brushed off on. I think also if you're practicing in homes, there is a whole level of trust you need to get from the family. They will not just open the door and be like, okay, come on in, They may be a little hesitant. I was practicing in homes and they were not sure why I was doing that, and we put a strong emphasis in ABA on generalization, and then, telling them about that is one thing. But another thing is that building that trust with the family is going to be essential if you're going to try to practice ABA properly, or if you're going to be planning to coach the family within their natural setting. So that's also something really important to consider. I think sometimes families won't open up as quickly. They will be reluctant to share or disclose some of the challenges that their kids have, because there's also a little bit of stigma still around developmental differences and
Mm.
The whole neurodiversity is not understood as clearly there as it is maybe in the States and other countries.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a little bit of stigma placed on the whole challenge or developmental challenge that the child might be facing. So really, when you're practicing in Croatia, I would say it's important to highlight the child's strengths, and really focus on where they can do well. And avoiding the language that can further pathologize the child or
Yes.
the disability. So really being mindful and focusing on the strengths is
Yeah.
important.
You don't want to feed into the stigma.
No, exactly. And then they start to close off and try to they tell you less about what issues they have. And,
Of course.
it becomes very difficult for you to work and get the full picture. And I think the last thing, maybe just finding a good balance between formality and warmth with the families. Croatians are very warm in general as people. They will, once you are part of their close group, you will feel welcome. But they expect professionals to keep some of that formality, to have a little bit of distance, but also when the family offers you a cake and offers you some rakia or something there, that you take that. It's quite, quite offensive, I would say, strange if you never take them up on that offer. So I think it's kind of nice to find that balance for yourself if you're practicing in the country, and stay somewhat formal, but be warm so they can feel like they can open up and trust you.
Oh, that's really, really interesting. You mentioned you're also doing some work in Montenegro. Tell me a little bit about kind of what you're doing over there.
So Montenegro happened probably around the same time for me as Croatia. And this was not something that was planned. This was 2017, just as I moved back to Croatia. I was contacted through the University of Zagreb. I was contacted by a really wonderful, very passionate woman who lives in Denmark, who is also a director of a Danish foundation that was doing some charity work in Montenegro. This woman, her name is Anastasia, and she is a mother of a child with autism. He's now a grown-up, and she runs the foundation. Is called Margit Nielsen. They were they were looking for projects, and they decided to. Anastasia is a big believer in ABA. She was practicing ABA with her son back, I think, nearly 30 years ago in Denmark, and she was looking to disseminate ABA in Montenegro and help kids get better services there. So she was looking for someone who speaks the local language, who also knows ABA, and she was somehow connected with me. And I honestly thought that was only going to be one training in Montenegro, that was just going to go and do an intro to ABA. What is ABA? How is it practiced? And, just kind of a one-time engagement. This turned out to be one of the most inspiring projects for me, because we had a huge impact over the last 8 years. We started off knocking at different doors in Montenegro because neither of us had any connections with people in Montenegro. We were visiting daily centers. She was visiting with members of the foundation, visiting daily centers and asking who was interested at first. We connected with the Ministry of Education there and Ministry of Health, and they hosted several sessions with us. Very quickly, the word spread through the country. We were approached after training several centers, daily programs, we were approached by the Teaching Assistants Association in Montenegro. And the way that kids with autism are getting educated in Montenegro, there's a huge shift towards inclusion. So a lot of kids are in regular mainstream classrooms, and they're supported by one-on-one with the teaching assistant. And these assistants decided, we really need some training. The training we received initially, this was not giving them enough. And so as part of our project, we trained about 400 teaching assistants in Montenegro. Wow. Yeah, quite impressive. And this was an amazing group. But then we felt like, Now we've trained some professionals. We trained nearly all teaching assistants in the school board, but we need to reach out to teachers. Can we help teachers? But we couldn't help teachers so easily unless we became accredited professional development, I guess, providers through the Ministry of Education. So we went under a very long process of getting that application approved. We were approved and we were lucky to get into schools. So we had, many workshops. We have an entry-level course that I teach there, which is about 4 days long, that covers all the bases of ABA, and people are so eager that they will even come on their weekends. These teachers and teaching assistants will come out and professionals will come out and hear the course. So altogether, we counted back, I think we trained, the country's quite small, we trained about 7,000 professionals over the last several years. And we also offer parent training, online parent training workshops that are free. They happen once a month on different topics, that are ABA based. And we offer some parent coaching that are specific for each child that are also, those are all virtual sessions because we're not able to be there. But yeah, that's kind of the scope and the reach that this Margit Nilsson Foundation had in Montenegro. It's very significant.
And so did you folks essentially introduce ABA to Montenegro? Was that happening there at all?
There are several people who are not who claim to be practicing ABA, but the therapies, the approach they're using is absolutely not ABA. And I would actually say it's completely unethical. So yes, I would say we were the first ones to tell people what ABA really is and what it isn't, so that also parents can kind of decide what to do and what not to do and what not to pay for anymore. So that's been the biggest shift.
And why do you think the folks in Montenegro sort of bought in so quickly to ABA? What were some of the things that were going on early on that sort of made them go, this is what we need?
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that their practices that they were using, Montenegro is, I guess every country has a different way of raising children. And, they put a strong emphasis on discipline and respecting authority and being very stern. And I would say maybe sometimes a little rougher than usual,
Yes.
And a lot of people were not feeling like this is the way they want to practice anymore. And so when we kind of stepped to the forefront, we were like, wow, this is kind of what I always felt should happen, but I never knew where I could learn more about it. And we really put a very strong emphasis on making the training very practical so that people walk away with some really good tools that they can use, whether they are a psychologist or a speech and language pathologist. And so that was sort of, I think what helped. And what also helped was that the foundation provided, Montenegro is a very, I would say, a country that doesn't have so many resources, so they can't pay for big trainings and conferences and things like that. So the fact that this foundation generously offered free training for whoever was interested, this was something that really made a difference. And people started to become more and more eager to learn more and more and to be a part of that project. So that was a benefit for sure.
And I hadn't really heard of Montenegro until I met you. So can you tell me a little bit about Montenegro as well? Kind of, where is that relative to Croatia?
Yeah, it's just a little slightly south from us, slightly southeast. Montenegro was also one of the countries in the Yugoslavian Union that is now independent, but is highly sort of under the Serbian power, I would say, in some ways, because they're not as economically stable on their own.
I understand.
And like I said, it's a small country. It's absolutely stunning. It's beautiful. If you ever get a chance, you have to go and see it. It's just got mountains and the coast and everything all in one. You can ski on one end of the country, and an hour later you can swim on the other side. So it's a really beautiful place, and people are very much similar to how they are in Croatia, very warm, very welcoming. So yeah, it's a lovely place. And we have a the same language with a slightly different dialect.
Cool. And so what are sort of some of the future plans in Montenegro? Like what, now that you've trained all these folks?
Yeah, so the future plans, actually, the foundation has now shifted focus towards opening the first, I guess, sort of early intervention program in
Amazing.
Montenegro. And I think there's going to be an official opening in a month or so. So it's going to be a smaller scale intervention program for now. We'll see how far it takes us, but there's going to be about 5 professionals working there under supervision, and families will be able to come and learn more about how to engage with their child and how to move their development a little forward. What's different about this program is that the focus will be really on families. The focus will be on the family being a part of treatment, which is very different from what the rest of the country offers. Even in the center-based part of the program where they have rooms for kids, they have cameras, so the parents can, if the child is not ready maybe for the parent to be in the room, or for some reason that's not practical, or the parent is tired, they can always watch what their child is doing, and they will be accompanied by a professional who will explain. So, it's kind of different spin on everything. They're going to have a fitness program, an autism fitness program for kids there. So they will do a lot of community outings and a lot of teaching in the community, which will be quite nice. So that's in the works now as we speak, which is quite lovely.
And are you going to be the one supervising that program?
Yeah, I plan to supervise the program, and I'm very excited to be a part of that. It'll be nice to see where we go from there, and it might be nice to kind of make it an exemplary program for kids, maybe as they start to improve their early intervention services in Montenegro, because that's also lacking there, like it is in Croatia.
And I understand you're now in Denmark. What?
Well, we just, I guess we can never sit still. I think my engagement with the foundation kind of made me more interested in Denmark. And I was starting to kind of look around at options in ABA in Denmark. And I connected with my current colleague or supervisor who I work with on her team here in Copenhagen. Initially, I was going to sort of maybe start afresh and open my own services here, but I'm very happy to be a part of her team. And it's always more fun to have colleagues than to be on your own, especially in a country where maybe ABA is, not as known as the information you have.
Yeah. And so, what are some of the sort of long-term plans, goals for you? What are you looking at doing?
Yeah, I think probably the team I work with here, we are also trying to disseminate ABA in Denmark. So that's our new goal, to kind of develop some training programs and to move that forward. There's also some engagement around helping centers that are formed here that support people with developmental disabilities and especially autism. Our team will probably be engaged in coaching them. So, there's a lot of nice work being done here. We hope to expand to doing some more research to show the practical applications of ABA and, the social validity behind it and all of that. So we really are heading in that direction and trying to move it along here. So yeah, we hope to stay here. I think I hope this is our last big move, but you never know. That's what I said last time. It's fun to go to different countries. You start to question yourself more, your practices more. What's relevant? Is it relevant here? How does this apply to where we are at?
That's amazing. You really seem to have kind of your hand in the development of ABA in a lot of countries. Sort of, you've got Denmark, you've got Croatia, you've got Montenegro. I know that you are supervising Maja Simjanovski in Slovenia, who I had on the podcast, and this has really become a passion for you to sort of introduce this field to so many new places.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it has been quite rewarding because the feedback that you get from other people when they hear you speak about ABA. I actually had one person attend my IBT program. Actually, it was an RBT program back in the day. And this was all the attendees were from the region, like Croatia and surrounding areas. And when I asked them to introduce themselves, she said, I'm actually here to just prove to myself that ABA is something I don't like. And I thought, okay, whoa, that's a challenge. Okay.
For sure.
And at the end of the course, she was absolutely floored by the applications of ABA. And she said, you know what? I am so eager to learn more. And I'm so glad I came that all the myths I had and the misconceptions that I thought were there, you have just dispelled them. And so she was very, very eager. And so feedback like that makes me really feel so happy because I if ABA was what some people are describing it to be, especially those groups on different platforms, I would be the first one to be against it. But unfortunately, it's very hard to find a way to have a dialogue with these groups. And so when you hear that people come and to your courses and had this slightly negative view of ABA, and then you tell them what it is or what you have been practicing it, like, they are blown away. And that gives me so much more energy and power that you feel like you want to really spread the word further. So it's been really very, very motivating for me. I never thought I would be doing this. I never thought I would be doing it in so many countries, but it has become my biggest reinforcer for sure, and something that's definitely a very, very important mission for me.
I can feel that. I can feel it in your voice and in the work you're doing. And then stories like that would be reinforcing. That's amazing. Yeah. Really cool hearing about all the work you're doing, and looking forward to kind of following it and catching up down the road to see how you progress and maybe hear about a few more countries you've been to.
Yeah.
Really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Ben. It was a great pleasure. Lovely to be here, and thanks for letting me share my mission and my story.
Amazing. The third secret word is rosemary. If you enjoyed this conversation, here are some other episodes of Behavior Speak I think you'll find interesting. Episode 216, Behavior Analysis in Slovenia, with Maja Simjanovsky. Episode 191, Behavior Analysis in Belarus, with Hanna Kalinuskaya. Episode 184, Behavior Analysis in Ukraine, with Ala Maskalets. And episode 175, Autism in Serbia, with Dr. Marija Kolic.